Hi Bio4 and welcome to part 4 of urinary. We're going down the nephron, so we start out with the glomerulus, and we had said that this is an afferent arteriole arriving, an efferent exiting, E for exit, A for arrive, and it's going to start filtering this blood, and that fluid is going to land here in the Bowman's capsule. Okay, to get a better idea of that filtration, we could look at the capillary, and here you see what the capillary would look like with its little filtration devices, right? The pores that are going to be the type of capillary that's quite full of pores. And then over those pores are these podocytes. So this extra cell that sort of wraps around them, podos meaning legs here, and this is the cell body. So that's what it would look like. Let's backtrack. These then, see, cell, nucleus, these are the podocytes that are sort of coming over those capillaries. So they are made of modified simple squamous epithelial cells. And they have foot-like projections, right? Podo. And they wrap around the capillaries, forming the inner wall of the glomerulus. Okay, what we want to look at now is the rest of the nephron. All those tubes that go up and down and down and up, what are they? So we're going to give them names to each one. I'm going to tell you what these names are, and then we'll go to the diagram. So the first piece I had told you was a proximal convoluted tubule. And so I had mentioned that one to you in a previous video. We'll go back to it. And then a descending limb of a loop. So we're coming along, proximal convoluted, and then it's going to take a dip. And that dip is going to be the descending limb of Henle's loop. And then it's going to curve and come back up again. So if it curves and come back up, then it's going to be the ascending limb of Henle's loop. Then these tubes are going to continue along. So it's going to continue along like this. And that's going to be called the distal convoluted tubule. And then finally, this sort of last portion of this nephron is something called the collecting duct. And from here now, we're going to have urine dripping from there. Okay, that's the last portion of this long tube that initiated with this ball of yarn of capillaries. And it had an entryway and it had an exit way. And be careful, because sometimes the entryway is drawn at the top, sometimes drawn at the bottom. Just pay attention to the width of this. The larger one of the two is the one that is feeding this glomerulus. And so it's sort of the blood is coming in there and coming back out here. And what's left behind is this filtrate, this fluid that's going to travel through this nephron. Okay, so let's go through those names again, this time with a really good picture. Here's the glomerulus, okay, with its capsule. Now, this first piece here is going to be the proximal convoluted tubule. Following that is going to be a dip. And so this then is a descending limb. So here is a couple ways they call it. This is a descending limb of Henle's loop, or the descending limb of the nephron. It's different in different books. So then it's going to keep going. This is the fluid that you filtered is going to travel up this way. So this now is the ascending limb. And it's going to go now to something looks convoluted again. It looks just like this. But now it's not proximal. Now it's distal. So it's the distal convoluted tubule. And now it'll feed in to the last freeway here, which is a collecting duct, and then you have just made urine. But before that, all sorts of things happen in the proximal convoluted tubule, in the distal convoluted tubule, and in the loop of Henle. So we're going to, if you look at that in a physiology course, you look at it quite closely. Here we're going to do a little bit of summarizing. So rather than looking like my little yellow picture there, it looks more like this. You have millions of these in each kidney, and there's a glomerulus, and they dip down into the medulla of the kidney. Remember that word? Some of them are more superficial, and their dip isn't as deep, and others come quite far down. Now they're going to feed into this collecting duct. So this is sort of shared by many of them. And that, remember, is what's actually now contains urine, not just filtrate. We call it filtrate in the beginning until it gets modified, and by the end we're calling it urine. So how are these nephrons irrigated? In other words, coming in and coming out are the peritubular capillaries, the capillaries that surround these tubules. And you need to know that the blood vessels are going to carry about 20% of the cardiac output, which is the amount of blood that's leaving the heart, is going to the kidney. That's a lot, okay? And it's going to arrive by the renal artery. So renal artery is going to bring it in, right? You saw that when we looked at arteries. Renal artery and renal vein are really large vessels. The vein usually is more anterior. The artery is sort of hiding behind. In this drawing, they drew it there, but really you'd have to move the vein out of the way to see it. So blood is coming in, right? It's coming into that artery. And then that's too big an entryway. It's going to have to branch, and it's going to branch a lot. So how is that branching? And this is so many different words here. We'll end it with this slide and then start it again with this slide so that you get to hear it a couple times, whether you like it or not. So without rewinding, I mean, without going back. So here's my renal artery, and notice what it's going to do. It's going to come around these pyramids. And then not only that, is going to branch over here to the cortex. So the first thing is the first artery is the one that goes between these lobes. So it's interlobar artery. Interlobar artery is the ones here going between these pyramids. Then the interlobular artery. Interlobular is the one that's coming here beyond, these little guys that are coming in here beyond the pyramid. So do not confuse lobar with lobular. Then it would branch again into what is the afferent arteriole that we talked about. Now it's going to branch into that little tiny little artery that's feeding into the nephron. It's going to feed from the afferent arteriole into the glomerulus, correct? It's going to come out the other end of that ball of yarn as an efferent arteriole. And then where does it go? After that, it's very interesting. It's going to wrap around the nephron like this. Those are the peritubular capillaries. Let's see if I can show you. I want to show you that. I'll have to show you in the next one, then I have to show you in the next video. Just remember that the peritubular, peri means around, tubular means the tubules, which are the nephrons of the kidneys, and these peritubular capillaries then are nothing more than that efferent arteriole that has just chosen to surround that nephron. We're going to stop there and come back to all this one more time. Thanks for listening. Bye.